With all the problems that the country was facing after they won the Revolutionary War, it was obvious that what they were doing now wasn't working really well. The Continental Congress and using the Articles of Confederation, the laws that he'd used during the Revolutionary War, weren't strong enough to hold the country together. So once the war was over and everybody stopped fighting for kind of a common thing, it started to seem like it was going to fall apart, that there was no real who could do what. All the states were kind of doing different things because each state used to be a colony, and each colony, even though they're all part of England, kind of did their own thing. And it was the revolution that brought them together, but when the war was over, they kind of separated again and they kind of all started doing their own thing again. And so they realized that they couldn't have a country where the government didn't really have any power and each state kind of did its own thing. So they had to figure out how to balance this power. What are we going to do? How are we going to have the states still be able to be their own states, but have a government strong enough to solve problems? And so these men who were part of the Continental Congress, who helped fight the Revolutionary War, who came up with all these ideas about freedom and liberty, and who wanted to create the United States, had to come back together. They had to go back again to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, back to Independence Hall, where they wrote the Declaration of Independence. And they had to come up with a plan before the country fell apart. Things like who was going to have power? How much power were they going to have? Alexander Hamilton suggested that you just needed one person with a lot of power, but it was sounded an awful lot like a king. So you can imagine that Hamilton's plan to have somebody lead the government who was like a king didn't get very far. He only got one vote for his plan. Okay? So there were other plans. There was a New Jersey plan, obviously from people from New Jersey. And then there was the Virginia plan, which kind of is what our government is based on today. So we come up with this idea of, okay, yes, we will have, we have a president, but the president's just one part of the government, okay? And then we have a Congress, which are representatives from each state, okay? But that's just one part of the government. And then we have the Supreme Court, which nobody really thinks much about. That's another part of the government. So we have a government of three parts. But the real big problem was the Congress, okay? Because if you don't know it, the Congress is who makes the laws. The president does not make the laws. The president can approve the laws, check, or he can veto the laws and say no. But even if he says no, the Congress can still vote to say yes. So despite what we think, the real power in the country is with the Congress. So there was a lot of discussion and debate over how much power each state would get in the Congress. So how many people would each state get to send to the Congress to help make decisions and to make laws for the United States? So the little states were like, well, the big states, if the big states get more people because they're big, they're just going to outvote us little states all the time. And us little states aren't going to have much power. And those big states are just going to bully us, basically. And then the big states are like, whoa, that's not fair. We have more people in our state, so we should get more votes because we're bigger and we have a bigger population. So this is a huge debate that they come to first, was about how will each state be represented in Congress? Because the Congress is going to make rules for the whole country, and so we need to make sure that everybody is represented fairly. So there's this word that comes up all the time when we talk about the Constitution, and that is compromise. A compromise is when you have two opposing sides, side A and side B, and they can't agree. So they get together and they say, I'll do this if you do that. And then this side says, I'll do this if you do that. And they come to an agreement that kind of satisfies everybody's desires and what they want. So the first compromise we come to is called the Great Compromise, okay? And the Great Compromise is the decision as to how we are going to handle how many people each state gets to send to Congress. And again, the Congress are the people who get together to make the laws. So this is a very important thing. So what you're going to learn today is you're going to learn today what compromise did they make? What agreement did they come to so that big states wouldn't have too much power and little states would not have enough power? Because one person said, too, that maybe each state should get one vote. And they're like, that's not fair either. Well, the little states might have thought it was fair. So how did they solve this problem? So what you're going to learn about today is how did they solve the problem? What was the great compromise? What agreement did they come to about how each state would be represented in the Congress?